Welcome, NutritionRadio.org listeners. This is Lonnie Lowery, a university nutrition professor of over 20 years and podcast host of long-running shows like Iron Radio. Come on in. Lecture time. Hey, everybody. Today we have a brief clip on tools for designing a healthy diet. This is just the setup portion of this. We're really constrained by this roughly 10 to 15 minute time frame of these Nutrition Radio episodes. But let's go take a look. If you've wondered, how can I even begin to think about designing a healthier diet or make better choices? This is going to be the lecture that sets it up. What you don't hear here is a deep dive into the history of food guides, right? Food guide pyramid, if you will, from around the world. A deep dive into the DRI tables, like the recommended dietary allowances or the upper level, right? The toxicity ceiling if you want to supplement a nutrient, or even the nutrition facts panels, the food labels that are so handy when it comes to knowing what's in a food. In any case, this is the setup. I hope it at least gives you that 30,000-foot view on how you might consider making better choices when it comes to your diet.
So let's go to the next slide. Again, guidelines and tools for designing healthy diets. Evaluation methods. How can you plan and evaluate a diet? Well, number one on our list here is variety. I think if you could boil down, if you had to, all of nutrition into a word, this would be the closest to the best. Variety and balance. I don't like the word balance as much because it almost suggests equal parts. For example, of protein, carbs, and fats, and that's not usually how we think. But variety really is. Think about with variety. If you get enough variety, it means you're not missing any particular nutrient, right? There are some food groups that really focus on certain nutrients, like calcium in dairy, vitamin C in citrus or strawberries. You get the idea. So if you have a lot of variety, you tend to get all of the nutrition that you need. But there's even more. Wait, there's more. You also don't overdo any one thing. So if there's a particular pesticide or food preservative or something that you shouldn't be over-consuming, when you get a variety of foods in your diet, you don't have to worry about that. A colleague of mine has eaten fat-free hot dogs and bolognas for as long as I can remember, decades. And I worry about him when it comes to that, right? There's not enough variety in his lunch every day. And although it's fat-free, those foods have, well, nitrites and preservatives and things like that I'm just not much of a fan of. And I think you can overdo them. For example, nitrites have been linked to cognitive changes that aren't very beneficial or stomach issues, things like that. So variety is a big one, and it's our number one. Number two on this list, moderation. So think portion size. Unfortunately, in this country, it's financially smart to be obese. And I actually read that in a magazine editorial once. And the thinking is this. If you can buy a certain amount of food, let's say for $4 at a fast food chain, and for $4.19, you can get almost twice as much. Well, it makes sense financially just to spend the extra 19 cents and get all that extra food. But people tend to eat what's put before them, what's available, and so we overconsume. So moderation is one thing we should look at. We're going to get to weight control in the middle section of this course. And suffice it to say that calorie counting has its pros and cons. But calorie balance, it is a good beginning when it comes to weight management. So moderation and portion size is number two on our list here. Number three is a key word that you're going to be asked about, nutrient density. Nutrient density. In other words, lots of vitamins and minerals and phytochemicals or even protein per calorie, okay? High nutrients per kcal. I often put a star on this part of the slide because high nutrients per kcal or high nutrient density is very important. A good example of this would be like comparing orange juice to a Coke or a Pepsi. Two similar sized beverages like this might have similar amounts of carbohydrates and even sugar, but the orange juice has vitamin C and potassium and other nutrients per calorie, and the sugary pop has almost none, basically has none. It's just sugar calories, so empty calories. So that's what the right side of this slide really talks about, is nutrient density. It's not necessarily high in specific nutrients, but it's high in certain nutrients per calorie, right? Meats are an example that break this rule. Meats have a lot of nutrition. They have a high dose of a lot of things like protein and vitamins and minerals, but per calorie, they might not be as good as something like broccoli. Do you follow me? That broccoli, it's got all this vitamins, minerals, phytochemicals per calorie because there's almost no calories in broccoli. In any case, the lower right side of this slide just talks about empty calories, right? And those sort of empty calorie foods, that's what we mean. They have low nutrient density. All right, so let's move on our little list here. That's 3 ways to evaluate things. 4 through 8 are on the next one of these evaluation methods and nutrient recommendations. Number 4 is the DRI, the dietary reference intakes. I'd like you to start thinking of it, say it to yourself as the DRI tables, because this is that umbrella category we started this discussion with, this umbrella category that contains all the other tables, the RDA tables and the AI tables. You get the idea. So the DRI, the dietary reference intakes, are a set of tables that we use to make recommendations. Number 5 on this list is daily values. Daily values is important too. You'll see this on food labels that we're going to talk about in a minute, but this is a percentage. It's a percentage of how far that food gets you on that nutrient toward a daily goal. So if we pretend that the average person has a 2,000 calorie per day intake, and we want to know on a regular intake like that, how close does a certain food get you, let's say, on vitamin C? Oh, it gives you 19% of your vitamin C for the day. Again, that's based on this generic 2,000 calorie diet. So remember that this number 5 here is daily values are percentage. Number 6, dietary guidelines for Americans. Not to sound sacrilegious, but these are like the 10 commandments of nutrition. These are important rules that you can follow. They get published regularly. And interestingly, we're going to explore some of this stuff in detail, but they include exercise. Now, as someone who's an exercise physiologist and a nutritionist, I've always found that odd. There's nothing particularly dietary about exercise. And yet, because exercise science or personal training is not a licensed profession like dietetics or nursing or dentistry, we have to rely on licensed healthcare professionals to give a lot of the exercise advice, and often it does fall to the dietitians, whether you like that or not. I personally rather see the exercise physiology and exercise science professionals doing this stuff, but they don't have licenses. So the dietary guidelines for Americans here, number 6, include exercise. Number 7 is the food guide pyramid, or we need to start just saying food guide. I'm guessing you guys grew up with the food guide pyramid of one kind or another. Now it's myplate.gov. I may actually ask you that. What is the food plate? Now it's MyPlate. It's a graphic, like an infographic of a plate with a little circle next to it, little cup next to it, as if you're looking down on a plate and a cup. So we got rid of the pyramid for a couple of different reasons that we're going to talk about here. One of the things I always found interesting about these food guides is they often say eat less and exercise more. Well, thanks for that. But the truth is, we know that, right? It's not the theory. It's the practice when it comes to weight control, for example, why we have an overweight and obesity epidemic. If everybody ate lean protein foods and tons of fibrous vegetables, we'd cut our disease burden and our obesity risk and costs way, way down. So it's not the theory. That's pretty solid. We know what we need to do, but we don't. It's the practice. And then lastly on this list, number 8 is food labels or nutrition facts panels. And these changed just a couple of years ago, depending on when you listen to this. So it's a big deal that these things change. When they make a change, it's expensive and it's controversial, and people get the nerds, just nutrition nerds, get very salty. Some of them, some of the different food industry groups. They'll come out of the woodwork and fight a certain change or push for a certain change on food labels. But one thing you guys have that I did not growing up is a very standardized food label, nutrition facts panel. Almost any food you pick up, with the exception of certain like butcher cut meats or produce, they're going to have this panel. And it's always going to be the same font. It's going to have the same information. And it's very handy to plan and evaluate diets. So you might want to ask yourself, are you someone who reads food labels fairly regularly? Okay, we're done. That's topic 2 covered already as far as tools and guidelines for planning and modifying your diets, monitoring your diets.
And we'll cut that guy off right there. Again, the lecture was done in audio format, partly for an online section. It might be slightly dated in some ways, but it's a good overview, as I had mentioned in the setup. So class dismissed. We'll see you next time. Hey, everybody. This is Lonnie Lowery here to tell you that NutritionRadio.org is not only backed up on YouTube. You can search Lawnman07 from within YouTube if you can't find it through the NutritionRadio.org search, but also on iTunes. Please consider giving us a review. We're brand new on there, and it really helps with them noticing us and getting this, ranked and that sort of thing. And of course, you can find us on Spotify, Audible, / Amazon, all of those sorts of outlets and podcasts wherever you get them. So thank you. You are appreciated. The NutritionRadio.org podcast is for informational purposes only. If you're interested in starting a diet or exercise program, check with your physician, nutritionist, or qualified exercise physiologist in order to make the progress that you need.